All right, we're back for some more bullet climb. Right now we have a rating of 1850. We've been doing 1 plus 0, but it's been getting harder and harder to do commentary. So I was thinking we'll try switching it up to do, maybe let's do 2 plus 0 at first. That'll give a little bit more time for us to discuss some of the positions. Turn the volume down too so we don't get that feedback. Okay, first game against Nata the Great. Nat the Great. Okay. Scandinavian. Keep the queen in play. Develop towards the center. And we're going to look for maybe opportunities to poke at the position. Although he plays very solid. And oftentimes, white's just looking to expand onto the king side. But it's a pretty good move. But already, I'm looking to just continue with my development. Knight here is multi-purposed. I'm attacking the bishop, also hitting this pinned knight. And if he takes, I'm thinking of taking with the pawn, and then moving the king out of the way. Yeah, I think I have to move the king out of the way first. He does have pawn forward, but I'm thinking I might just take it because this juicy square would line up for the... Okay, so now the rook lines up on this square. Now we're getting into some territory here. I could take the bishop and then take this pawn. He wants to go for that. I think I do a check. And then knight here to land the knight onto this square, forking the rook and this pawn. He should play something like queen over. It's not a bad move. Let's bring the knight in. And then maybe rook lift. Now he really needs to consider doing something about this, but he didn't. He's still playing pretty well, I will say. So here I'm going to take with this. He's probably going to give up the rook. He decides not to. And, okay. Attack the rook. I suppose he actually had a decent move there. He had a way to maybe trap my queen if he had played rook over. But he goes down. Yeah, that was a good game. All right, back to it. We'll play some 2 plus 0. We'll stay in the 2 plus 0. It gives it a bit more time. But we'll have to keep in mind that if we run low on the clock, then we will still have the option to flag our opponents, which may come up. Okay, con carm. All right, the Sicilian. I will play the Alapin, which is a variant where you sort of ignore the usual Sicilian lines. You just prepare this move d4 and then just sort of fight for the center. Often in these types of closed positions, I find. But your long-term play, I think I can do this. Because if knight takes, yeah, I don't mind this line. I basically am just giving up the bishop, but in return getting a bunch of squares. I'm going to keep provoking weaknesses. That's not ideal, I would say. All these kind of pawn moves are not so ideal for black to be making, but this is going to be the ultimate goal. This pawn and this pawn. So this bishop is very strong, but it's basically doing the job of a pawn, which it's not terrible, but I sort of see that at least as a disadvantage for black to have to do this with a pawn. And now already maybe I go to offer the trade, see if he'll oblige. He chooses not to. I think I'll develop my bishop here for now, just because I want to stabilize if he tries to gang up on it. But ultimately, I'm going to want to... Actually, with that pawn move, he's giving up that square that he just had. I'm going to stop the advancement of the pawn, play bishop back at some point, and just gang up on this new weakness now. Knight in. I can now take the bishop and make some threats, threatening this pawn and threatening this pawn. And everything is solid. Everything is locked down. He could give up the bishop, but I will first insert a check. And this is already big trouble because his king can't step up, he can't block it, he'll have to step back, and in doing so, he'll lose one rook. And now I will pick up that piece. So I'm just up a clean rook. Check. Rook on the 7th. Okay. Double rooks. Attack the queen. Queen was low on squares. Don't even think there was easy place. Tuck the king away. Oh, okay, he decides not to give the check. And this will lead to mate. Okay, good game. Con Carm. Okay, P beat. I feel like I'm playing a lot of opponents that are lower than my rating, so maybe maybe I'm on my settings are not appropriate or something, because I should be playing some higher rated opponents too. Okay, I'm just going to sink in the knight on these light squares. White's light squares look very weak. I'm just going to defend the knight and continue to develop different options where to put the piece. Okay, think now I'll take. I want to be energetic. Yeah, let's just do this. I want to be energetic. He probably wants to play bishop here to just sort of offer mass trades. And my problem is that will simplify the game a lot. So like say after I take, now pawn takes, at least maybe I'm getting some imbalance after I take, and then castle. Still need to find a way to activate the knight. I'm thinking knight to here, to here, to here. This is going to be my killer square. I want to stop his advancement. Notice my queen covers this square, so he doesn't really have pawn push yet. My knight's going to come in. He's going to be in trouble because this H pawn, sorry, A pawn, is going to be under fire. Knight's going to come in. It's going to gang up on this E pawn. This knight maneuver was really critical, and I think he needed to, oftentimes in these positions, match it with some corresponding knight maneuver of his own, or even consider giving up the rook for a powerful knight like this, just because it's so devastating. Okay, and then check. And now there's a lot of different ways to do this. I'm just going to try to poke at some weaknesses. Find a way to coordinate. I guess that wasn't the best way to do it. Okay, queen here. And then queen here, attacks the knight. Still trying to find a way to coordinate. That king move was actually very strange. I realized, okay, so there's the knight. Okay. Now technically, I think he's still doing quite well. Oh no, this is going to lead to, is that not mate for queen check? Jeez. Jeez Louise. All right. Yeah, I didn't see the mate there. After, because his king would slip down and then even pick up my b pawn. So I think I'll just cash in, win some pawns. Now I'm offering, yep, this is a mass trades. He actually has to be careful there too. No, I'll just pick this up. Yep, and this one with check. Okay, there's going to be a way to win the rook after this. Do we do... I think we're going to do no rematches, at least not right now, especially for opponents that are lower rated than us, but that was a good game too. There was going to be a way, though, in that position to find a way to fork the rook and the king because of how separated in those queen endgames. If the king is very separated from the piece that, the minor piece, like the rook, there's going to be a way ultimately to do it. So let's try this Alapin again. I often like the Alapin as sort of an anti-Sicilian. It's good for playing against a lot of opponents that have decent experience playing the Sicilian, and you can walk into a lot of really complicated Sicilian positions. Already here, what if I just offer, this is a similar position to what we had before. I didn't love the sequence that I made, the move order that I had. Maybe I try a move like queen here first. I'm trying to mix it up. I'm trying to make this creative. And then what if I go bishop here? Yeah. Okay. Knight here, trying to sink the knight in, but also threatening the bishop. I think he can get out of this, though. Nope, that just drops a piece. I think there was a way for him to get out of that. Maybe for the first time, we might actually go back and even analyze. Okay, so I'm just going to go for a rook lift because this pawn looks juicy. Oh, and he misses that, which is going to be dangerous. Yeah, gives it up really quickly. I'll just go back because I actually didn't like this continuation on my part. After knight takes, bishop, knight here. What I was thinking was, why didn't he play bishop here, which retreats the bishop from threat, covers this square, and then I didn't really have a good follow-up. And I feel like he was going to then castle and just be up a clean pawn. So maybe my opponent missed an opportunity there. Slightly funny name for my opponent. We will play for the center, keep developing, and just try to stay up on the clock. All right, and this is going to be the thematic push for the pawn break. We're going to trade down. I'm going to get this attack, and the rook was actually not able to move to that square. And now already, let's just try to be aggressive, sink the knight in, mass trades. He can avoid this queen trade for sure. It would probably be advisable for him to do so. But he decides to go in for the trade. This is just utterly losing now for white. White's pieces are so hemmed in with so few moves that by the time that black finds a way out, I could even just offer the exchange back. In the process, I was able to win 2 pawns. Maybe though, in hindsight, I should have been a little bit more careful with this because now I'm letting white take the 7th, which is definitely not ideal. My plan for it was to get my rook behind these pawns and figure if I can get the rook behind the pawns, then okay, I'll try to be accurate here. This is a move I don't like the look of. Maybe I start with pawn forward. Rook over is not really that threatening to me. This was the move I was worried about. And basically I wanted to give back that pawn and in return have 2 super strong outside pass pawns. This, I feel like, will be the winning advantage. Already here, I think I just play pawn forward because the bishop can't relinquish control of this square. I should play a pawn move so that I can at least, in some of these lines, sack the rook or something. But already here, I think I just play this first. And then there is no bishop check, so the queen can come back. This bishop's now pinned to the rook, and there's no, my king is not on the dark square, so there was no way for him to move the bishop with check, which is kind of what I'd be worried about. Honestly, yeah, I think the cleanest technique for my opponent was to, well, for me at least, was just to give up the queen for the rook, trade down, easy to win a rook against 3 pawns endgame, and in bullet you don't want to do something stupid like lose on time. Okay, maybe we'll do one more. I think we have time for one more in this video before we sign it off. I know with the 2+0 it's going to be a little bit slower. We won't be able to get through maybe 50 rating points in a single video, but it'll be slightly higher quality. Okay, so my opponent's going to play the Scandinavian, and they decide to play the queen all the way retreat line, which is also a very standard line for the Scandinavian. And we're reaching a pretty balanced middle game, although I feel like black's playing very defensively, almost like with a system, where it looks like they would just sort of blitz out these moves no matter what the position is. And I feel like black's now a little bit worse just because their pieces are so cramped, although it's not clear how to make progress. I kind of want to not give up the dark square bishop. I don't love that option. I feel like black would have done better to try to maybe trade for the dark square bishop. Because now in a lot of these positions, this bishop's so much better than this one. I think I actually just want to sink the knight in now, offer a trade, which might be accepted. All right. Knight here is a sort of trap because you can never really bump the knight, not with the rook there. And that's a good move to get the rook, to get the knight out of that threat. I ultimately want to get a rook lift so I can get my rook in the action. Now, yep, that move is possible. There is even this outside pawn, which is an interesting one to pick up. All right. I think I just have to play aggressive. I think I just have to keep with the initiative. And if black's queen decides to take, I mean, it's too bad that I won't get a tempo out of it, but I think I just need to stay aggressive. Queen comes in, mate threat. Okay, stay aggressive. Pawn push is already getting dicey. The diciness here is that there are some tactics. Now with the bishop on this pawn. Okay, I don't see the tactic just yet, so let's just bump. And then maybe... Well, we do get a second to think. You know what? I'm going to try to swing the bishop around. I see this knight move coming in, but then this pin, this bishop was sort of falling out of play because of the pawn structure. I know maybe it could have come into play, but it was sort of getting out of play. This is a much more central square for the bishop, and now I can play on this pin. Maybe bring the rook over. And now I'm thinking of... Okay, I think a queen move like this is interesting, although he will just probably offer a trade, and I'll have to retreat because I don't really want that trade, right? But the idea was it sort of pins the knight, because if the knight moves, white can deliver checkmate. But it's a pretty easy threat to parry. I don't know why black elected to do that. There is still this option of getting rid of it. I'm going to go rook here, threaten to take the knight, but more seriously dislodge the knight, which I'm now going to do with this pawn move. This is a classic idea. I'm actually going to take the queen first because oh, what a slick move. Really nice sequence. All right, we're going to come down to time on this one. Really nice sequence to find this combination so that black didn't end up having to go down a piece, which is pretty amazing. We're going to go pre-move town, since we are pretty good at this. Trying to anticipate where the checks will come. Also keeping in mind that my opponent may start to go for... Oh, my opponent got me on time. Nice. Yeah, slightly higher rating in some of the time controls, but definitely there is a sequence here, a really nice move. There must have been a better, I think, oops. If I go back to that critical position here, I definitely made this mistake. I totally missed this idea, really sharp, because now if you take the knight, the rook can take your rook with check. And if you take the rook, which is what I did do, you can recapture. So what I should have done here was just the calm and sort of more obvious, just pawn takes knight. And now there is none of that funny business. If pawn takes knight, pawn takes, you can just take the rook. So he'll have to trade. So I messed that up, but yeah, very good opponent. Very good game. Thanks for watching.